Hi everyone, it's Andy from Hobby Headquarters. Today we're going to start building the 1/35th scale South Korean main battle tank, the K1A1. Now the real vehicle is based similarly on the M1 Abrams, the US tank. It does have some major differences in the torsion bars and the rest of the suspension. The vehicle is built by Hyundai with a lot of major upgrades on electronics from Samsung. The vehicle has a 120mm smoothbore gun and weighs about 53 tons. I was looking around inside. The kit looks like it's going to be a nice, straightforward, easy to build kit. So let's get started on it. You can see that right off the hull is a bathtub style hull, which means the sides as well as part of the sponsons are attached. Now the upper body has some really nice detail, including these screens that are pre-molded in. It's very reminiscent the way the Tamiya Leopard 2A5 was molded. Now, as we get to the road wheels, it's just a two-part road wheel, but one thing I really like that Academy does on this is that they give you a polycap. And the polycap construction, when you're doing that, is that you can take the wheels on and off as you go to paint them. So when it's time to paint the rubber on this kit, it's going to make it much, much easier to pop them off, paint the rubber, and then slide them back on. This is a quick little builder's tip as well. It's much quicker on the sanding process if you glue the wheels together first. That way you're taking out two seams at the same time. On the lower hull, you'll notice there's some unusual looking springs that the tank uses. They all fit together very, very easily. When it comes time though to put the suspension arms in, you'll notice that they've given you a half moon design, which means that when you put the suspension arm in, there's only one way to put it in, which I really appreciate. That way all the suspension arms line up nicely. Nothing worse than when a suspension arm, if it slightly glues out of position and you've got like a suspension arm that's raised the wheel off the ground. Some assembly on the back of the vehicle, getting all those parts together. And as I was going down the line starting to put the road wheels on, it's a little thing I want to point out to you. The polycap is kind of tight inside there, so just be very careful as you start to put the wheels on, and make sure you brace the back of it, because if not, it would be pretty easy to snap one of these torsion bars off. They're kind of thin, and because it's so tight in there, it really flexed it quite a bit. The other little tiny thing I had a little bit of a problem with, there's this little brace right here which is going to hold part of the side skirt out. It's kind of in the way of this of the drive sprocket on this, so just keep it in mind as you go to put it on that you don't accidentally snap this piece off as well. Now what I'm going to do right now is I'm just going to put all these wheels into place now, just to kind of show how the vehicle is. We might end up taking these off, you know, like we were saying, for painting the rubber, because it is such a small amount of rubber on there. It would be kind of difficult to paint in place, but we'll go ahead and put these on just to show you what it looks like. Now that we have all the road wheels in place and we see that the suspension is nice and level, we can move on to the next step. And that's the two-part barrel. Now this is going to be a little bit of difficulty getting this seam down the middle out, but not impossible. What I like to do is, now I've already gone ahead and glued this together really well, and the easiest way to get rid of the seam, I think, are these soft padded foam sanding sticks. And you can really get in there, but it's not going to leave a flat spot. And you can see I've been working on this one just for a few seconds right here, and the seam starts to completely disappear. If you have any problem with it at all, what I would recommend doing is taking your liquid cement and just brushing another coat down the middle of the barrel. Let it fully dry. You can give it a little bit of pressure on it to make sure that you don't have any gaps or anything, but the liquid cement and then going back and forth over it with the soft sanding sticks, and especially when you get to like little raised areas right here, try to use the corners of this to get in here so you're not sanding any of these areas flat. So it can be done. Now obviously it'd be nicer if this was a stacked barrel like they did with their M1 Abrams, but this is a little bit older kit, so I'm sure that they've learned from this. But like I said, with a little bit of work you can really get a nice barrel out of it. Okay, we're going to start working on the turret a little bit more. A couple of things I'll point out to you. Academy has included all of the anti-skid plates already pre-molded into the top of the turret. So the hatches are all workable once you get those on, and then it's just a matter of putting on all of these other auxiliary parts. which everything seems to, I was doing a little test fitting a little while ago, and everything seems to line up really easily. And I also was doing a little bit more refining. As you can see, we've gotten most of the seam out of there. I will do a little more polish sanding, and we'll also figure it out how it looks once we paint it black to see if that little ridge is still there at all. For right now, I'm just going to put this in place just for visual effect. So as you notice that the top of the turret's got kind of an unusual shape to it, and it has a whole bunch of bins that fit around the entire outside of the vehicle. My advice is just to get them all lined up in advance, and then you can start going around and just start gluing them into place. And we did some dry fitting on all those already, and they all fit very well. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is glue all these bins on. So here are the bins all put into place, and you can still see it. They mimics the unusual shape that the turret already has. Hopefully you can see too, they've done some real nice weld detail on here as well. So the turret looks really cool looking, and it's definitely got a very unique shape to it. With the turret all complete, now we can go ahead and start to install the turret racks. And they are very finely molded and actually fit on fairly easily. Once you line up all the little pins, the thing almost kind of like clicks into place. And I'll go back and glue it in a little while. And finally you've got this one over here as well that clips onto the back. And we'll use a little bit of liquid cement to glue all those together. Plus there's one other one on this side. Oops, it goes in right here. And I noticed too that when you get it, to glue it from the back here first, because as soon as you click this piece in, the rest of it kind of just pops right into place. So I'm going to go ahead and glue those into place right now and come back and show you what it looks like. Okay, the top portion of the build was actually pretty straightforward. There's only actually a few parts, a little bit of the side shields here, and little things like the hatch. We've left the clear parts out of the hatch so we can paint it and pop those in on a later time. Now, I was debating back and forth. Oh, before we do that, though, I want to show you the tracks. They are rubber band, and they do require the melting of the track together, but the majority of the track is not seen on this vehicle, and I was testing them out, as you can see on this side, and they fit fairly decently once we put that side piece on. I don't really think it's going to be necessary to get any other type of track on this. Also, I was looking about possibly attaching the top now, but that also makes it really hard to get the track on because of all the bracing underneath there. So what I think I'll do is I'll leave the track off, pop this kind of just temporarily into place, do the entire paint job. We'll be able to pull this off, get the tracks, weather the tracks perfectly first, put them on, and then do the whole vehicle that way. That way we're not trying to make extra steps for ourselves, because this can actually lock in here, and then it's got a couple of locking points up here, so it'll stick together well enough that we can still do our paint job. So with that in place, and of course we have the turret already ready to go, and it's actually about time for the paint job. I'm showing you the picture of the box art here, because as we start to paint the vehicle, we have to come up with the right colors for it. Now, after looking and doing some studying on the internet, what I think we're going to do for the main green color, we're going to use XF67 NATO green with a little bit of 27 black green into it. And I think it's going to come up with the correct color, or close to the correct color. The black will obviously just be the black, will be NATO black for the little squiggles on it, as well as the little light tan squiggles. That'll be XF57 for that. Now when it comes to the brown, I was looking at these two colors, and I think we're going to end up doing a mixture of NATO brown with a little bit of the flat earth mixed into it. And I think we're going to mix these two up and come up with a nice brown color. Now I won't go ahead and do the black and white coat on this because there is so much camouflage on it to begin with. I think most of it's just going to be hidden, that fading effect. And because of that, first coat we're going to put on will be the green coat. And I'm going to mix up a batch of that paint right now, come back and paint it and show you what it looks like. Okay, I just did a little testing out here, and I used an old bottle of paint I had, and this is a 50% mix of NATO green and 50% of the black green. So I finished up the paint job with the green, and actually very, very happy with the green. It looks very similar to what I've seen on the internet. And also once we put a little bit of the dull coat on, it'll change it, just slightly darken it a bit more. So now I've mixed up a batch of the brown paint using 75% flat earth and 25% 68 NATO brown. And now we're going to do our little camouflage pattern on top of it. So I have the final base color on there with the black. The only other color I need to put on now is going to be our XF57, which is going to give it some of these little flashes of brightness to it that'll kind of break up the silhouette even more. Since we have all the colors on the base, what I thought it was time to do is I've gone ahead and I've put the clear lenses in place on the front here of the hatch. I've also attached the upper and lower hull together, as well as we went and painted the machine guns black, left those in place because that's the little buff that we're going to put on is not really going to affect that at all. We've also painted the tracks a flat black since they're mostly rubber, and as you can see we painted some of the wheels individual colors in there. Now we will do some light weathering on this vehicle. I don't want to go too crazy on it, but what I'm going to go ahead and do now is do the XF57. Then we're going to spray the entire vehicle in TS80, which is Tamiya's flat clear. That is going to completely seal in the entire paint job. So we got the final little bit of the buff squiggles on there, and I really like the way it blended everything together. It really makes everything pop right out. So now that that's dried for a little while, we're going to spray the entire vehicle with Tamiya's TS80, the flat clear. And this is going to completely seal in the entire paint job because it is acrylic paint, and now we can go back over it with our washes and things like that and not have to worry about damaging the paint underneath. Now this stuff is pretty strong, so I always do this outside. That's why you never actually see me doing this on the model, because I always take it outside so it doesn't smell up the entire store. Now there are a few decals inside the kit, but unfortunately there's no type of instruction at all in the instructions to tell you where they go. So I'm kind of guesstimating that usually most tanks put their emblem shields up front. And the decal, the picture of on the side of the box has something completely different than what is in the kit. So, okay, we put the second coat of clear coat on the vehicle, and now we're just going to take our black panel liner and kind of highlight some of the areas that need to have some shadow effect to it, like the smoke dischargers, as well as especially I started to do, just to kind of show you, the one little pie shape of the vent back here. And it's because as nicely as it's molded, you do need to have a little bit of a shadow effect inside of it. And we'll go over some of the other little areas here and there to kind of put some highlight on it. So I'm going to go ahead and go over the entire vehicle with that. But before I do that, I've had a few people that were a little unclear about how the different steps on painting are. So what I thought I would do is kind of just draw you a quick diagram. This black line right here is going to represent the model surface. The first thing that you want to put down on it is your paint, obviously. And then after you do your paint job, whether it's camouflage or whatever else you're going to do, you want to go over it and put a layer of lacquer clear on it. And what that's going to do is that seals in your entire paint job. Then after you do your lacquer clear coat, then you can put your decals on. And then after your decal, you want to seal it one more time with lacquer. And then once you have this sandwich, now the decal is sandwiched between the lacquer, so it's not going to dry up and crack and fall off later on in time. Then after you get your final layer of lacquer on, then you can do all of your weathering up on top of here. Whether it be your oils, your panel washes, whatever you want to do. I've had quite a few of these questions come up on there, so I thought I would just kind of draw you a quick diagram to show you the different layers. So it's paint, lacquer, decal, lacquer, then do all of your weathering on top of the final coat of lacquer. We'll weather up the tracks a little bit. We're just going to use a little bit of Tamiya's brown panel wash. Kind of liberally go over the surfaces of the track. Get it nice and wet. And then just using a little of Vallejo's light sienna. Kind of just pack that into that all those areas. And like I've said before on this will dry much lighter than the way it is right now. And then once it does dry, what we'll do is we'll take a cotton swab and go over just the track pad portion, because that portion will stay nice and clean. Or not clean, but it'll get rubbed off much easier than inside all the little nooks and crannies. So I'm going to let that dry and come back and I'll show you what it looks like. I'm also just going to put a few more streaks along the vehicle too. I've already highlighted all of these little bolt heads with the Tamiya and left a little bit of extra of the light sienna on all the tracks. But I just want to create just a few little streaks of grime and stuff. So put a little bit of thinner on, and then just a couple of little streak patterns. Randomly like that, and then taking our same brush dipped in the thinner again, just kind of blend them out so they're not so harsh. Just so they're real subtle, but you can still see them. Now, you've probably seen me do this many times on some of the other builds, so I'm not going to spend too much more time on the weathering portion of it, but I'm going to finish up the model doing the weathering over the entire thing and come back and show you the completed model. Well, here we are. Here is our completed model, and I'll kind of give you a little 360 view of the entire piece to see it before I tell you the last couple of steps I took on it. First of all, I'll show you the fronts of the tracks, and how we rubbed off just a little bit off the front of the rubber pads, but still left behind all of the dirt. A little bit of fuzz left behind there. Then on the top, what I've done here is after we did our washes, I went over it with a little bit of the light sienna weathering powders and mixed it with a little bit of mineral spirits and kind of just put a little thin little slurry over the entire thing. And after that dries, just took a real wide flat brush and knocked off the excess of it. And you can see hopefully that it kind of accumulates in all the little nooks and crannies as dirt and grime. So, and we weathered up our machine guns a little bit. Did a little bit of weathering with some little dust and dirt all around the edges there. And then finally sprayed the entire model with XF57 buff to kind of just put a light little dust coat on and kind of blend everything together. So overall, the kit was a nice build, a good fit, and looking forward to putting this into our lineup of modern day battle tanks from around the world. So I want to thank you guys as always for watching, and please stay tuned because we have many more videos coming.